Caregiving is more than just a role, it's a journey of love, connection, and sacrifice, but too often, caregivers feel isolated, overwhelmed, and unseen. Welcome to the Care Collective podcast, a space for caregivers, healthcare professionals, family members, and anyone dedicated to supporting others. I'm your host, Mikayla, and each week we have a conversation designed to help you feel seen, supported, and a little less alone. Whether you're looking for practical advice, emotional support, or just a reminder that someone understands what you're carrying, you're in the right place. Because no one should have to navigate caregiving alone. So let's dive in. Have you ever looked at an old picture of yourself and thought, I don't even recognize that person anymore? Maybe it was a picture from high school or college, maybe it was your wedding day, maybe it was a random Tuesday afternoon where you were laughing so hard that someone snapped a picture and you just don't even remember the last time that you laughed that hard. You look at it and think, she looks so happy, she looks so carefree, she looks so familiar, and then almost immediately another thought follows. What happened to her? If you've ever felt that way, today's episode is for you because today I don't want to talk about the person you're caring for as much as there's a million different things that I'm sure are on your mind right now. I want to talk about you, the version of you that existed before caregiving became such a central part of your life. The person with dreams, goals, plans, the person who existed before appointments and medication schedules and insurance phone calls and worrying about someone else's health became a part of your everyday routine. Because I think there's a grief that caregivers experience that not many people acknowledge or talk about, and it's the grief of losing yourself. Yes, you can grieve yourself. When people think about caregiving, I think they usually think about the physical responsibilities, helping someone get dressed, driving to appointments, cooking meals, managing medications, helping someone in and out of bed. Those are the parts that people can see. But what they don't see is everything caregiving quietly asks you to give up. Maybe you stop traveling as much, or you turn down a promotion you had worked so hard for at your job. Maybe you stopped going to church as often because you felt like it was difficult with all the health complications. Maybe you quit exercising or slowly lost touch with friends, and maybe you can't even remember the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because somebody else was asking you to or something that they wanted to do. Those losses probably didn't happen all at once. There's something gradual so that sometimes you don't notice them until years later, and then you wake up and realize that your life really doesn't belong to you anymore. And I think one of the hardest parts about caregiving as well is that nobody officially becomes a caregiver. I often ask whenever we do these interviews of caregivers, when is the moment that you realized you were a caregiver? And it's never, oh, yeah, I quit my job and, all of a sudden was doing, all these things overnight. It's usually things that add up over time. Well, before you even quit your job, you've started running them to appointments, constantly worrying. Somebody I talked to yesterday, their answer was, I think I became a caregiver the moment I couldn't stop worrying about my parents. Almost in the same way that you might worry about, if you have a child and you send them off to school or, they're going on a field trip and you're constantly wondering and worried about whether or not they're okay, right? There's no job interview, there's no orientation, no handbook. All of these moments start with something small. I'll take mom to this appointment. I'll help dad organize his medications. I'll stay with them while they recover. I'll just handle the insurance paperwork. I'll move closer, or maybe I'll fly in for a weekend so that I can help take care of some of these appointments. And then that little while turns into months, months turn into years, and before you know it, you've become the person everyone depends on. The emergency contact, the medical advocate, the scheduler, researcher, chauffeur, problem solver, emotional support system, and while everyone else's life moves forward, yours quietly begins revolving around someone else's needs. I recently heard someone describing caregiving as living on some. I think another way to describe caregiving is that you're living on someone else's timeline. Your schedule isn't your own. You don't even get to have your own emotions anymore because you're constantly trying to manage somebody else's feelings. Your future doesn't even feel like your own because suddenly all of the plans that you had are gone. And every decision gets filtered through one question. How will this affect the person I'm caring for? Can I take a vacation? Can I accept this job? Can I even move further down the street? Because now they're in a nursing home and I don't want to have to deal with traffic on the way to visit every single day. Can I even just go to dinner by myself or leave the house for a few hours? And eventually you stop asking yourself what you want. Your brain literally gets trained to just think about this person because it's easier to think about this other person's feelings, world, things that you need to do for them than to deal with your own emotions. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're in a caregiving situation, you're going to have some pretty complex emotions that you need to work through. And I think what happens next is that we become incredibly good at surviving. And surviving is nowhere near the same thing as thriving, as enjoying life, as being happy. We just wake up, we solve problems, we put out fires, and anticipate needs before they're spoken, and just start focusing on functioning from day to day. And there's a difference between surviving and living, just going through the day and actually feeling like yourself and waking up excited to just take on the day, right? And I think that's why I hear from so many caregivers that they feel invisible. It's not because nobody notices how much they're doing. Maybe you do have really appreciative people in your life. People that say, "You're amazing. I don't know how you do it. You're so strong." But underneath those compliments, there's always a quiet thought that doesn't get spoken out loud whenever people say these things to you. I don't want to be strong all the time. I just want to feel like me again. And maybe you felt guilty for feeling that. And maybe you've been thinking, how can I miss my old life when the person I love has already lost so much more? But I want you to hear something today, and that's that grief is not a competition. Just because someone else's pain is bigger does not mean that yours is not real. You are allowed to love someone to the ends of the earth and still miss the life that you thought you were going to have. Both things can be true. I hear from a lot of therapists all the time that we should focus on using and instead of but. So, oh, I'm so grateful that they're in my life, but I feel really overwhelmed. You don't have to say but. You can feel really grateful and you can, feel overwhelmed with everything that's going on in your life. Don't feel like you have to limit yourself. One concept psychologists sometimes talk about as well is something called role engulfment. It's the idea that one role becomes so consuming that it starts to replace every other part of your identity. Instead of thinking, I'm a friend who also happens to be a caregiver, or I'm an artist who also happens to be a caregiver, the identity slowly shifts until you become, I am a caregiver. Full stop. Everything else fades into the background, and after enough time passes, you begin to wonder if those other parts of you even exist anymore. I don't think they disappear necessarily. I think they just get buried. I think they're still there no matter what happens. The things that make you you are really hard to erase completely. So I want to ask you something, and I want you to think about this. Feel free to take a pause. At any point, if you want to ponder about this, jot some notes down in your phone or in a journal, or, just save these questions in the back of your mind and think about it when you're up at night and you can't sleep because you're worried again. So, who were you before caregiving? What makes you lose track of time because you become so focused and passionate about it? What was the last thing that made you laugh? What do you dream about? If you could do absolutely anything in the world, what kind of music did you listen to before caregiving? Where did you love to go? Did you have a bucket list place on your vacation list that you absolutely could not wait to go visit one day? What conversations excited you? Who did you imagine becoming? Again, I want you to take a minute and really think about that because I don't think those answers are gone. I think they're somewhere deep inside of you and you just learn to push them to the side, quiet them. And I know some of you might be thinking, that's nice, Mikayla, but I do not have time to think about these things. And honestly, I'm sure you don't have time. Maybe your loved one needs around-the-clock care. Maybe you're exhausted and barely holding everything together. I'm not asking you to completely reinvent your life tomorrow and take off to Italy on a boat because that's what you've always wanted to do. I just want you to do something much smaller. What is one tiny way you could remember yourself this week? Could you read a chapter of an old book that you read every single year? Could you listen to music that you used to love and just give yourself the 3.5 minutes to enjoy it? Could you sit outside for 10 minutes and listen to the birds like you used to do every morning? Could you call an old friend or paint or garden or journal, watch the sunset? None of those things are going to fix anything that you could be dealing in your caregiving experience, but they will remind you that you're still a whole person. And I firmly believe that taking care of other people is so much easier when you are whole yourself. Because if you are trying to help and fix other people and you're broken as well, that's going to be so much harder. And you would rather come from a place where you can be whole and charged and have your energy fully there as you're trying to take care of this person. And I think one of the biggest lies caregiving tells us is that we have to disappear in order to love someone well. I do not believe that is true whatsoever. I think our society also has a habit of just praising the people that disappear, like, oh, the hardworking mother that spent her lifetime devoted to her children. And then they never even realized that she also had problems with depression or anxiety, right? The healthiest caregivers I have ever met are not the ones that don't have needs. They're the ones who've learned that caring for themselves is not separate from caring for someone else. It's a part of it. Because eventually, if you neglect yourself long enough, there won't be much of you left to give. So today I want to leave you with this. Maybe the goal is not becoming the person you were before caregiving, because let's be honest, life changes us. And if we went back to who we were before, I think that kind of defeats the purpose of life, right? You want to just bring those forgotten parts of yourself forward into the person you're becoming now. Maybe you're kinder than you used to be, or more patient. Maybe you've become stronger and figured out that you actually have more strength than you even realized before. Maybe you learned compassion you would have never known otherwise, and I think all of these things are beautiful. But I hope that you also don't lose parts of yourself that made you you, that you might have pushed to the side during seasons of caregiving, because the world still needs those parts too. And more importantly, you deserve to know that they're still there. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with another caregiver. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is the feeling of being understood. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, I'd be so grateful if you'd follow the show and leave a review. It helps more caregivers find this community and reminds them that they don't have to carry this journey alone. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And until next time, remember that while caregiving may be part of your story, it is not the whole story. So take care of yourself too.